Let's look at how to composite render passes in Affinity Photo, specifically render passes from 3ds Max and the V-Ray renderer. In my folder here, I have a selection of render passes that we will use to create the final composite. Now, I've saved these out as 8-bit TIFF files, but you can of course choose 16-bit for extra precision, or you can even use 32-bit OpenEXR files. You might use 32-bit either for the extra precision or for HDR compositing. But just bear in mind that if you do choose 32-bit, you will need to perform some tone mapping if you want your final result to be in standard dynamic range. To create the final render, you only need these specific render passes. So you'll want Diffuse filter, Raw Global Illumination, Raw Lighting, Reflection, Refraction, Self-Illumination, and Specular. Other passes, like the Render ID, Cryptomat, and Normal Map Pass, are optional, but I will show you how to use those to enhance the composition. Let's get started then. So in Affinity Photo, the easiest way to bring in all of those image files as layers in a document is to go to File, New Stack. We'll add our files here. Just select all of these TIFF files, and ordinarily, if we were dealing with traditional photography, we might want to align these, but because these are 3D renders, we can uncheck automatically align images, and click OK. Okay, so now on the Layers panel, we'll see we have a live stack group, and our result looks quite odd. Don't worry about that, just go to Arrange and Ungroup. Now it's time to start compositing the render passes. So first of all, we want Diffuse filter, and we want to bring this to the top. Now, one method is to just click drag the layer and bring it all the way to the top. Just keep your cursor to the left, like so. But another approach is to use keyboard shortcuts, and these are much faster. So we want our second layer to be brought to the top now. That's the Raw Global Illumination. Instead of dragging it, I want to use the shortcut for Move to Front. So on Mac, that's Shift Command right bracket, and on Windows it will be Shift Control right bracket. So let's use that now. Okay, and then we want to set the blend mode of this layer to multiply. Next, we actually want to duplicate the Diffuse filter layer. So let's do Command J on Mac, Control J on Windows. Then we'll bring that up above the Raw Global Illumination layer. We can just use Command right bracket to achieve that, or Control right bracket on Windows. Then we need to get the Raw Lighting layer, bring that to the top, once again using our shortcut. Set this layer's blend mode to multiply, and we now need to group Raw Lighting and Diffuse filter. So hold Shift, select both these layers, then use Command G on Mac, Control G on Windows to group. We'll name this group as well, just to stay organized. Then we want to set this group's blend mode to Add. Next, we've got Self-Illumination. So these are any self-illuminated aspects of the composition. In this case, it will be the sky. So Shift Command right bracket again, move that to the top, blend mode to Add. And then finally, we have Specular, Refraction, and Reflection. The quickest way is just to hold Command whilst selecting these, or that would be Control on Windows, and then use the shortcut again to bring them to the top, and simultaneously we will set all three layers' blend modes to Add. So that is our basic render pass composite complete. But now we can actually take advantage of the fact that we're bringing together the different render passes. So for example, with the Reflection render pass here, I might want to control the strength or the appearance of the reflection elements in this render. So one easy way of doing that is by using an adjustment layer. Let's try a simple brightness and contrast adjustment. And before we do anything else, we need to clip this adjustment layer into the reflection layer. So we just click drag and then offer it to the label or the text of the layer, not the thumbnail. Drop it in there. And now the brightness and contrast adjustment is isolated to that reflection layer. So I could just bring up the brightness, for example, and perhaps increase the contrast slightly as well. We might also want to change the color intensity of the sky, so that's the Self-Illumination layer, and for this we can once again go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and this time use a Vibrance adjustment. So again, we'll clip that into the Self-Illumination layer just by dragging and offering it to the label or the text, then release the mouse button. And so now we can just bring saturation down to desaturate the sky. So we'll just take it down slightly, not too much, and then close that dialog. And for the refraction render pass, we might add a live filter layer. Something like Diffuse Glow, for example. I'll just zoom in slightly so you can better see the effect. And for this filter, I might increase the intensity, decrease the threshold, and perhaps experiment with the opacity to find a good balance for the glow in the windows here. Now, I mentioned these optional render passes, which we've currently got sitting down here. So I might use the normal map pass to relight the image slightly. Once again, I'll use my keyboard shortcut to move this to the top. And what we want to do for this layer is add a live procedural texture filter. On the preset here, we want to scroll down and choose Simple Bump Map Lighting. So temporarily, we'll just close down the filter dialog, select the parent normal map layer, not the procedural texture layer, and then set the blend mode to color dodge. Now this is far too strong, so we need to double click, go back into the procedural texture dialog, take the brightness down, and then we can experiment with light direction. So you can see here in real time, I'm able to manipulate how the lighting looks in my render. Once I've found something suitable, I can just close the dialog down, and that's non-destructive, so I can hide the layer altogether, or I can go back in and revise this lighting change whenever I wish. Finally then, we can also use the render ID or the material ID layer, even the cryptomat layer, if you've chosen to use cryptomat, to create selections of particular areas in the render. Here's a quick example. I can use the flood select tool over here, set the tolerance to 1%, because we're just dealing with solid colors, and then also uncheck contiguous, then just click once to make a selection of the ground here. Now I can simply hide my render ID pass layer, and then, for example, quickly add a curves adjustment, so that's Command M on Mac, Control M on Windows, then Command D to deselect, or that would be Control D on Windows, and now my curves adjustment is masked to just the ground area, as you can see. So if you know that as part of your workflow, you're going to be working a lot with masks and doing some isolated editing, you can also use spare channels. So let me go back to my render ID layer. I've just shown it here. I've still got my flood select tool active, and I might just quickly make a selection of the right-hand building here. On the channels panel, I can scroll down, right-click the pixel selection, create a spare channel from it. Scroll down again, here's my spare channel, and to stay organized, I can right-click and rename it to Building Right. Then I might do the same for the building on the left, so click over here to flood select this region, right-click pixel selection, create spare channel, right-click the spare channel, rename Building Left, then deselect. Once again, I'll hide the render ID layer, and this time, let's say I add a brightness and contrast adjustment, so layer, new adjustment layer, brightness and contrast. If I wanted to isolate the effect to the building on the right, I would right-click this spare channel down here and choose Load to the alpha channel of whichever layer I have currently selected. So that's the brightness and contrast adjustment. Then I'm free to manipulate the sliders here and see my effect just isolated to the building on the right. So there we go. That was a guide to compositing render passes and also some techniques and ideas for enhancing your renders. Thank you for watching.